last year, I think it was actually about around this time last year, maybe a little later, I got a little bit of a bee in my bonnet wanting to do some stuff that wasn't fighting robots. And that resulted in me having a lot of fun with a boat, and a few other people also having fun with boats. It was a great time in general. That whole thing quite rightly drew some techno games comparisons. And since I'm on a school holiday at the moment, I've been watching quite a lot of techno games back. Just trying to think which events really took my interest. And one has taken my interest. Rope climbing. I think this was probably one of the ones that I remembered best from watching the show originally, apart from, the obvious stuff like the sprinting, because you had kind of Anarchy or what became Anarchy in there. The rope climbing was probably the most interesting to me. First series, lots of the same sort of design. Second series, it then broke apart. It might have been the third series, actually. At some point, it broke apart into two classes. One that they called Natural, and the other, I can't even remember what they called it because it was crap. It was basically a competition to drive up a rope the fastest with wheels. I want to go for the Natural style. Now, I've been thinking this through for pretty much the past week. And I've come up with quite a few ideas on how to do this. I'm not sure any of them are good. There are a lot of ideas. So if I can find the pen I kept around, I want to look through a few of them. My plan is to start simple, assuming this is easy. And if I find out it's hard, I'll change the plan. So the simple plan, this is kind of plan A. Oh wow, this is not nice to write. I've tried to kind of steal Numberphile's visual style, and it's already unpleasant. But plan A is 3 servos and a couple of sticks, basically. So I want 2 arms, each arm having some kind of servo-based gripping mechanism. I don't quite know how that would work yet. For the rope to kind of come through. And then another servo here kind of acting as a hinge to sort of close and open this gap. So the idea being that the top would grip, the bottom would release, close to lift the bottom up, grip with the bottom, release with the top, open to move up, and so on. I think there's a chance that will work. I'm going to be using some very weedy servos. It's going to be 9-gram servos. I've got a box of like 30 of them behind me. Partly why I'm going for this, to be honest. It might work. I feel like it's probably harder than I think it is. The problems I'm imagining are, first of all, having enough grip strength from these servos to actually grip the rope, while also having enough slip on kind of these parts here to be able to move up the rope when I've sort of gripped on the bottom especially. I think the top is going to be the hard bit. Pulling the bottom up shouldn't be too bad, but when it's kind of gripped on here, trying to move something up, because the motion is going to be kind of that way, I can see there being a lot of stiction here that I'm going to need to solve without making it so slippy that it can't grip. So that's plan A. Plan B is this, but not crap. I don't know what that'll look like yet. That'll be a question of seeing where the issues are. I think the thing I'm imagining I'll have to do is finding a way of keeping these sections kind of perpendicular with the rope, so that when it's opening and closing, it doesn't end up at weird angles. How that will work, again, I don't know. Plan B is basically a problem-solving phase from Plan A, which I don't really expect to work. Plan C is a lot more complicated, but potentially a lot better. Maybe I should just build Plan C, but that would require effort, and I'm not really about that. So here's what I'm thinking. Rope is down the middle, and instead of having a kind of top part and a bottom part, I would have 2 sides. Like this. Each with some kind of grip mechanism in at least one place. Possibly even on... Oh, I've already lost track of what's what here. Possibly on both ends. And then it would be almost a sort of 4-bar mechanism to walk this up as the two sides. So let me think how this would... This was not a good thing to do live. So this would be in something like this position with some cross members that are in some way servo actuated. That is not how it will end up looking, but that is the basic idea. So you basically got a hand over hand system, but everything is kept, I suppose in this case, both parallel and perpendicular to the rope. That's plan C. I'm going to have to think that one through a lot more if I end up doing it. That's going to take a lot of prototyping, I reckon. This one, however, I think I can just do. Big point of failure I'm expecting immediately is this whole setup here. I'm hoping I can literally just shove a servo on there and have the servo arm be the hinge. Maybe it'll need dual servos. Control of that could be quite tricky. If that's the case, I might just remove the motor from a servo and use it on the other side as kind of a dead hinge, but to at least give some rigidity to everything. That's the plan. That took way longer to explain than I expected. This is probably going to be a really long video, and ooh, it's snowing outside. I have a short attention span. Build footage or footage of something built? I don't know yet. Let's go! I lied. It's neither of those things. This isn't build footage or built stuff. Instead, it's what I hope is a bit of a teachable moment. Because I've hit a point that I very often hit in a build where I'm stood here with a pile of parts, staring at them, hoping that a problem will solve itself. And it's not going to solve itself. Here's the problem I've got at the moment. I'm going to move this over and ruin what little symmetry there is in this setup. And it is going to upset me, and I'm just going to deal with it. There we go. So, the problem I've got in my head at the moment is very simply how long these arms should be. The longer they are, the bigger the kind of stride length of this thing will be. How can I demonstrate? Think of it like these scissors. These are very, very long scissors, so the distance between the two ends is quite large, so every step this would take... this is a hard thing to... Actually, every step will be bigger the longer these are. Hopefully that just makes sense, because my way of demonstrating it did not help. The issue with having it longer is that it's then going to require more torque from the servo to overcome any friction on the ends. The shorter I have this, the more friction this servo will be able to just power through. This is, I think, a 1.5 kilo per centimetre servo. Possibly a little bit less than that, actually. So on a 1 centimetre arm, it could lift let's say it's 1.2. I've pulled it out my backside, but that seems around the right figure. So on a 1 centimetre arm, it could lift 1.2 kilos, but on a 10 centimetre arm, it could lift 120 grams. Now, the weight of this isn't going to be much of an issue, but it will be the force of that friction in place of weight in that. You wouldn't believe I teach it, would you? I just can't explain. Yeah, that's the thing I'm puzzling out. And I could go away and try and calculate this with completely arbitrary figures that I don't really understand. The only way I'm going to solve this is to just try and make it. And I'm going to have to try and make it knowing full well there's a good chance it will suck. I've kind of already accepted that in my stage A to stage B transition. But, you know, secretly inside, I'd really like it to work first time. So yeah, I'm just going to have to make it. I'm going to err on the side of longer, just because it's much easier to cut this down than it is. This is just a scrap off the arena I built. Just 2mm poly. I don't want to have to cut another one, so I'm going to start long and then work shorter if I need to. That's something resembling a plan. There's a chance that what I'm about to do here is as bad of an idea as this is a bad camera angle. So, I need a hole for the rope to go through. The rope, I probably should have measured the rope really, but it's probably about 15mm. Which means that I need a hole larger than 15mm for it to go through. That gives me a choice between 10mm with a normal drill bit, which would be fine, or 25mm with this. This is not made for this job. This is made for wood. That's quite well in wood. Don't know how it's going to go with polycarbonate. So I've got this to go underneath. because this wouldn't actually pass through the little hole in the base here. And we're going to find out together whether or not this works. It's going to be loud, the sound is going to be horrible, this shot may never get used, we may just cut to the result. I don't know what's going to happen here, but let's learn together. Oh dear. This, by the way, is a 7mm pilot hole, just for this to clear through. For this to clear through. I didn't think that going through plastic on its own would be a good idea. The actual cutting out of this starts with some little sort of clippy wings out here, which hopefully will do a bit better. That went better than expected. I just need to kind of finish it quickly, but that's okay. Wow, needn't have panicked. That is absolutely beautiful. That's really clean. I did not see that coming. Sweet. And we're back with progress of sorts. Rope hole is made. Actuating middle this servo here is on. Yeah, if I put this here, you can really see the striking similarities to the design. It's just hot glued down for now. I would love it if hot glue was sufficient for this. It probably won't be. I'm probably going to need a proper way of mounting that, and that makes me extremely sad. I have found there was a limitation in terms of size that I hadn't thought of, and that is actually the length of the wires on the servos. So my thinking is that everything will be mounted on this, because there's going to be kind of dead space and then just a part on the end. So I will have to think about, you know, where that final servo goes and how it's going to make sure it can always reach where the receiver is. Receiver hopefully will be sat about here. So that does give quite a lot of scope. But it's something to be aware of. I don't want to be putting any strain on wires in this if I can help it. Yeah, it's all hooked up. Set up right now. These ones aren't attached. I can go away. Just got the first servo, the middle servo. It's attached to a receiver that I really should take the bind plug out of. That usually enhances reliability quite a lot. Just bound this up now. It was actually a receiver I hadn't bound yet. There's not many of those around here. I'm running everything through a dual ESC purely for power management. I can't be bothered getting a soldering iron out yet and putting a beck on. That's all that is. So, all I really want to see from this is what the range of motion on this servo is. I think it's about 90 degrees, but that will inform how things go on. Shh, don't do that. You scared me. Well, first of all, we have movement, which is great, and that does look like pretty much bang on 90 degrees. Well, it really is 90 degrees. I have, sort of with the settings in here, I don't know if you can just see, I don't know how easy this would be to see. I have increased the scaling on the throttle, so it's technically going beyond its normal sort of range. I think these have a hard stop on the gearing of 90 degrees. But that's more than we need, you know. Obviously, I would be starting it more like here. My plan is to bend... I'm really not giving you a good shot at this. My plan is to bend these a little. It's going to give... In fact, I might as well... I think that would probably be the rough default amount of openness. Closing down to something more like that. Or maybe... this is something I'll need to fine-tune. It might be that I don't use the whole range of motion. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to work that out and work out what is optimal. But that's a lot to play with. That's more motion than I really need. So next step will be, I guess, making this end and then deciding what sort of angle I want this bent to. Because I know I want it bent, but I don't know how far. So that's where we're at. Okay, there has been an amount of progress. I decided, I don't remember where I was at last time, but I decided that I should work on testing out a kind of grip mechanism. So this is as simple as I could make it. This is the underside of the kind of bottom leg. I've done this on the underside so that when it closes, it's not necessarily going to grip very hard, but I'm hoping that the pointiness of this corner will kind of dig in and just make it so that slipping that way won't really happen. It might even be that it could kind of pull itself up with that engaged. That was something that a lot of people seem to do with passive mechanisms. I'm kind of going for the best of both worlds here. So let's bring in the rope and try it out. So if I thread that through, which is totally an easy thing to do. Well, that's a bad start, isn't it? May have overestimated the thickness of the rope a little bit here. That's okay. What I should be able to do, because I haven't screwed any of this in place yet. Oh, it's worth mentioning as I do this that I've changed the orientation of this, because it was kind of upside down before, so now it's going like that, which is nice. So this, when it's closed, although I suppose this isn't necessarily the angle it will be engaging with the rope at. So maybe once this is all together, I'll change this angle. But for now, let's try it more like... There, he says, not really getting it to go on at all. We'll be right back. Well, I lied. We're not quite right back, but we are back. I quit on this after that for a little while, slept on it. Actually came down here today expecting to start a completely new project, but I saw this just kind of lying there, looking a little bit sad, and decided that it was worth another go. The big issue is servo mounting. Servo mounting is kind of awful, and I hate it, and I try to avoid it most of the time. I think there's only been one project where I've actually mounted servos properly. Normally, if I can't hot glue it down, I just find another solution. This time, it was all about the direction of the force. The issue I had with this design is that I was trying to apply a force. Say we had this servo here. In fact, let's use the real thing. Say I have this servo here. The force that's being applied on it is going sort of into this rope, but it's also trying to twist it this way. And that means that a glue joint down here is coming under the kind of stress it doesn't like. Previously, when I've had glue joints like that, it's been the servo kind of flat on a surface and the force coming down almost reinforcing the joint. So I've rethought this a lot. I think it's fair to say we're now off of plan A and on to plan B, the not crap version of this that's just higher effort. That took a bit of sort of work from me to decide what kind of project this really was. Is this a have fun gluing stuff down project, or is it a make it work project? It's now a make it work project. That's a little more pressure, but here is a solution I have. I had to do proper cutting and proper drilling, and it made me very sad. But here we are. So this is the new solution. So rather than trying to push into the rope kind of this way, we've got more of a sort of windscreen wiper action that closes and grips it this way. I've had to add this big 10mm block because otherwise there was so much gap here that the rope would just go through it anyway. Haven't tested this yet, don't know if it grips hard enough. So let's find out together, shall we? Get it plugged in. It does that. First of all, I have actually kind of changed my mind on this as well. I realised that it should be, you know, kind of going as closed as possible rather than as open as possible. But that's not what we're here to test. We're here for this part. So again, the idea is to just close that gap like that, kind of cut it off. If I put my finger in there, I can feel that grip. That's got a little bit of pressure behind it. The acid test will be to get the rope in there. And I think if we can dangle this off of there with it sort of latched on, that will be a result. So, yeah, that's holding. The servo is very unhappy about it, but that is holding. That happened. So, based on that, the next step, very simply, is going to be to make another version of this for the other end. Luckily, I already have the block. This was just one bit that had a hole drilled in it. That's then been cut in half. Not sure how much arm to make. I was just going to do a little sort of block on the end that had all of this stuff, but I think I need quite a bit of meat to mount it to the arm with. Yeah, it's going to need to be kind of mounted along here, probably on a couple of different points. But that's something I'm just going to problem solve away from here, and there's a good chance the next time we come back, this will be physically complete. Here's hoping, anyway. Well, for better or worse, it's done. Something's done. I think it's still more in the Plan A area than it is the Plan B area. It's kind of on the, maybe here on the arrow, that's how I'm going to put it. It's right there. But I'll warn you, it's not much to look at. So I've actually worked out which side is the top, but it's definitely there. I think this is probably the right way up for it. I like the idea of the blocks being on the bottom as a kind of friction surface for the rope to run along when these are moving up. But maybe that's me overthinking what is, you know, objectively utter garbage. I'm not going to turn it on in here. I want to save that when we're outside on the rope itself. I think it's worth talking through what a pain this is going to be to control. So it's got 3 servos, each independently controlled. The throttle just does open and closed. That's the easy bit. This side does both sort of grabby servos. So one is on left and right, one is on up and down. So one of them, I don't even know which, I'm going to have to work this out when I get on there, but one of them is closed when the stick is to the left. One of them is closed when the stick is down. So, I don't know what that means for when I'm driving this thing, but I'm basically going to have times where I need just one to be on, and times where I need both to be on. So it's going to be something like this, I think, to drive. Obviously not at quite this pace, but I think that's going to be the rough cadence of how it works, where you've got, say, bottom jaw shut, both jaws shut, top jaw shut. I think that's going to be how it works. Not entirely sure. That's going to be a learning curve, assuming this even grabs the rope, assuming it even moves. I have tested it and it moves its own weight well enough. Complains about it, but it doesn't do it. So there is very little left to do, but get it outside and see what happens. Where do I even begin? Come on, this. Could have done with the table. Oh well. Let's thread the old rope through. Hang on, that way, please. Thank you. This doesn't bode well, how hard this is to get through. It doesn't bode well at all. Right. So. Oh, it's that way, okay. Well. That's a start. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. Okay. It's very unhappy. Let's see if straightening the rope out does anything. It's very hard to control. Oh, well, that's buggered that then, hasn't it? So that was a failure. Not a spectacular one. Obviously, dropping it was an issue. That was completely my fault. All that happened there. Servo was previously just hot glued down. The hot glue gave way. That makes sense. What was worse was the fact that it did actually land on the battery as well. But that's just a lesson to me in putting batteries in better places, isn't it? Battery's absolutely fine. No visible damage. I'm sure it's okay. Went on the charger quickly just fine as well. The issue it was having in terms of actually climbing was simply the torque required to not only lift the top jaw, but to do so with the friction of the rope running through. I think there are things I could do to reduce that friction. I think I could really round over all of these edges, and that would probably help. I could also switch servo. I checked the specs on this. This is 1.5 kilos per centimetre. This is 2.5, so it's a little better. I probably could go shopping and find very strong but quite slow servos that would be perfect for this. Not sure that's the route I really want to go down here. This is kind of a use what you've got project. That's half the fun of it. On the bright side, the gripping mechanism, as we learned at the end, really working. Much more effective than I expected. I thought that this was going to pretty much hold itself when it was open just by the rope kind of having to kink through the weird angle. Sort of like that, you know, with it coming in and having to go, I thought that would be enough for it to grip. As we learned, it wasn't. So these were definitely doing something. I wish I'd played a bit more to find out just how well they were gripping. In fact, I might go back out and do that at some point. So it's not a dead loss. Plan C, I really believe would work. Because of the experience I've just had with this grip setup, which would really be the key bit of this, I really believe it could work. I think the issue you're going to have is that, just like here, where this is kind of trying to open, and when it opens, it's creating that kind of arc, which is very difficult for the rope to pass through. This would still have that issue to a certain extent. I think you'd have these two sides. They aren't just going to be going like this. They're going to be going kind of like this, which maybe isn't ideal. It's probably a fixable problem. Whether it's a problem that I'm going to fix by hand is another matter. Something that did occur to me as an extra option. Let me see if I can draw this out somewhere as a kind of plan D. Where on earth am I going to do this? Let's just do it down here. I did wonder if this kind of mechanism might do something. The kind of scissor style, kind of interlinked scissor style mechanism might work, because that does give you motion that is very much linear. That's very, very straightforward motion. I'm not quite sure how I would do the grip mechanism there. I guess you would have your kind of two grip bits coming off of areas like that. So that's something to mull over. That's a possibility. I think if I do that, the temptation to CNC it is going to come in. I'll have to fight to avoid that. But, you know, I'm strong. I can do that. But overall, stupid build. Got me down at one point, but still got finished. Quite a lot of wins in there, really. And let's face it, it was bloody hilarious to look at, wasn't it? That's always the goal. I don't think I have proper footage. I did take some video really quickly. I might try and slot it in, but I think it's portrait of this working just sort of on the desk before it broke. But if I don't have that, you're just going to miss out, aren't you? I don't have an ending to this. I never have an ending to this. Plan C might happen at some point. Maybe even skip to Plan D. Have to wait and see. But this has been fun. It's a silly robot. That's kind of what I do. You can do it. Of all the things I've made, this is by far the most unhappy about it. This is something else. No, don't fall off the edge. Come on. I should stop doing this before the battery runs out.